Hi, Jen. I am so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here.
Let's start with a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about, who you are, who you work with as a therapist, where folks can find you.
Yeah, so I am a millennial therapist. I work with primarily Gen Z and millennial women struggling with feeling overwhelmed and anxious, primarily due to a lot of people pleasing kind of stuff that they've maybe learned through childhood trauma, that kind of stuff. Um, and I am based out of Kansas City and here in the Midwest in Missouri. And on Instagram, do you want that right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. On Instagram, I'm at Jen Nobo.
Amazing. So let's kind of like go back in time a little bit. Tell me about how you kind of started on Instagram and what that was like for you, because I know you started your Instagram page kind of before you started your therapy Instagram page per se.
Yeah. So I started Instagram, I don't even know, like years ago. But I wasn't really active on it. I did do a little bit of like wellness kind of stuff on there. I kind of thought that was the approach I was going to go. That was also the time when I was working like as a therapist in agency work. And so I was like thinking that I hated being a therapist because I was burnt out. And so I started it with like this like wellness kind of thing, and then I just really wasn't doing much on it. And that's at like beginning of 2023. I think I started following you, and I was like, oh, therapists can like promote themselves on Instagram. What?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's when I like started like thinking like, oh, maybe I could actually like use Instagram like as a therapist.
Yeah. How did that sort of like shift for you between kind of creating content just as like wellness, maybe like a micro influencer kind of vibe, into saying, okay, like I'm actually going to create content to grow my practice and grow my business?
I think the biggest shift was it was more focused on like education all, on top of like it wasn't just like, oh, look at me, this is a pretty picture.
Yeah.
Um which is, kind of the vibe that I feel like I had on my Instagram page before then. Um and so like it shifted more into like, well, how can I like offer some educational pieces to this? What can I offer some tools to for people? And I think that was like the biggest shift. And really, I didn't start doing that shift until I joined your mastermind. So,
Yep.
yeah.
I know a big part of our work together was like niching down too, right? So not just how can you like educate and kind of be more of an authority instead of, I think when your content was a little more influencer-ish, it was very relatable and kind of like I'm dealing with the same struggles that you are. And so I think that the two biggest shifts I saw you make was one kind of like stepping into that like expertise role, and then also getting really, really clear on who you were speaking to and being really niched in your content. Does that feel true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely the niching down, which was hard.
Yeah.
Um, it was like hard to think about like who do I want to work with for a couple of reasons. Like, I mean, like there's just so many people and so many options, right? But then also like I was still at that point, like very much so in that scarcity mindset of like, if I'm only talking to like one person, then I'm
Yeah.
excluding all of these potential clients. And so like there was like some of that fear too of like, ooh, I can't do that because I don't want to miss out on a potential client, even if they're like not maybe the best fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about where you were at in your practice, like in terms of needing clients, kind of going full time, that transition when you decided to really niche down and go all in.
Yeah, so I was mostly just doing private practice work, and we were relying a lot on my husband's income at the time. But I was like making like around $2,500 a month in my private practice, so like it wasn't very sustainable. It was just like it wasn't very sustainable.
Yeah.
And so like I was for sure needing to grow. And at that point, like I was really only getting clients from like Psych Today or like some of the Facebook groups. But I really wasn't like doing any networking. I wasn't doing Instagram, like any of that. And so like it was a very slow trickle of clients
Yeah.
that were coming in.
And what were you charging at the time?
At the time I had my base rate. So, okay, I had a base rate of 111,
Yeah.
because I liked the like 111.
Yeah.
And then, but we had negotiated rates. And at that point, like, because I felt really afraid of like saying my rate's 111, um, I would automatically like offer a negotiated rate to everyone that I had a consultation with. And basically, we allowed people to tell us like what rate worked for them.
Yeah.
Um, and so like the rates were all over the place. Like I had one person who was like at 35 all the way up to like people who were at 111 who were like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Um, so yeah, they were just like all over.
Let's talk about the negotiated rate for a sec, 'cause that's not a term that I hear a lot of therapists use. What was kind of like your idea behind putting that in place?
So one part, it was the scarcity mindset, of like, ooh, no one's gonna want to pay, or no one will pay like 111. That's like too
Yeah.
much money. The other part of it is like, as I know you're aware, like we get really taught that like we're supposed to be accessible to people,
Yeah.
and that like we're bad if we like don't do
Yeah.
that. And so like that was a big part of it. I didn't want to like use the term sliding scale because I didn't have like a like, oh, if you're in this income then you like can be in this rate range or whatever. And so it was more so like a like, hey, I trust you to know your finances kind of
Yeah.
situation. So like you tell me what's going to be realistic so that we can actually do therapy ongoing moving forward. Um, and so that's kind of like how that's why I used the term
Yeah.
negotiated versus like sliding scale.
How did that feel for you at the time to kind of have clients that some were paying like as low as $35 and some were paying your full rate? How did it feel for you to kind of show up for your clients with that?
So for the most part, it actually like it didn't feel too bad. I mean, the hardest part was like I was bringing in like it's hard to be fully present for your clients if you're like thinking about how you're going to pay your own bills.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
um, and so like that was a part of it. I think the other part of it is I also felt like really uncomfortable when clients would be like, "Oh, I just got like a new job," and but they weren't like, "So that means I can pay more."
Yeah.
So I felt really uncomfortable being like, "Hey, like you're talking about how you're making all this new money, but like you're still only paying me $45. So like how do I like having that conversation with people of like, so we should raise your rate. Sounds like you can pay my full rate now. Like
Yeah.
that felt really hard. And then like sometimes I'd be like, oh, like honestly, like sometimes I'd be like, oh, that's nice. You're taking a second vacation this year.
Yeah.
I can't get my car fixed, right? Like,
Yeah.
so like that feels icky when that's like happening.
It sounds like energetically when the clients were like in need and you felt like, okay, this was really like providing accessibility to your community, you were happy to do therapy at any rate, right? But
Yeah.
then when it meant that your clients kind of got like a higher quality of life than you did, because the rates were negotiated, that's where it started to not feel so good.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And so we did a big fee increase. Where are you at now in your practice?
I am currently at 150
Yep.
and I don't have any negotiated rate spots. I did let some of my clients like stay at a negotiated rate, but I did even bump that up. So now my minimum is 75 for folks who are needing that. But those spots are filled and like I only have a limited number of them. So it's not
Yep.
just an open for everyone kind of thing.
Amazing. Did you think you were going to be able to get like a full caseload of clients paying 150 in the Midwest?
Um, I was pretty nervous about that. I had thought 125 felt really like high.
Yep.
And so for sure there was this like fear of like, I'm in the Midwest. People are not going to pay like I'm not going to be able to get a full caseload at 150.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but now
Has,
I
yeah.
now I do.
How do you think that that shifted?
Um, I think it was just like trusting the process,
Yeah.
right? And like I think early on in like coaching, you had like said something like out of your entire state, like you don't think there's 15 people who can pay 150. And like
Yeah.
I'm licensed in 2 states because I'm on the border of Kansas and Missouri. And so like I was like, okay, when I think about that, like in all of Kansas and Missouri, like surely there are 15 people who are like my ideal client that would be able to pay my rate.
Yeah.
And so that was like a huge shift.
Amazing. Where have most of those people found you?
So I was looking at my caseload earlier, and a third of my caseload is from Instagram,
Yeah.
and then almost all of the other ones are referrals,
Yeah.
either like client referrals or like referrals from other therapists. I think like I only have like 4 or 5 clients that are from Psych Today now.
Amazing.
So like almost yeah, it's like all word of mouth or Instagram now.
I love when therapists build their caseload through word of mouth referrals. I feel like it's so underrated, but I think that it really, really speaks to your clinical skills when your clients are having a good experience and are telling like their friends or their family and recommending you. I think is just so, so huge.
Yeah. And that, I mean, like that always, like that's nice because then, obviously sometimes every therapist has like this thought of like, am I doing a good enough job kind of
Yeah,
thing? Because we're human and we have those thoughts. Um, and so it is always like a night. It's like feels nice when like they're like, yeah, I'm telling my friends about you. Like I'm then that because I tell you they're getting something from it, and
totally.
paying 150 doesn't scare them.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I admire most about the way that you show up online, and I imagine in the therapy room too, is that you are just like so authentically you. Like both in your fashion and the way that you show up, the way that you talk about things, even like your people pleasing niche, you're like become a confident baddie. Like it just feels so genuine. Has that always been easy for you to kind of show up in that way or?
Um, I think so. Like, I felt really nervous when I first got into private practice about it.
Yep.
Like I remember because I was renting a like space because I do like part time. I have like virtual and in person clients. So I remember I was renting a space from another like group practice like 2 days a
Yep.
week, and I remember going in like wearing jeans one day, and I was like so nervous about wearing jeans because I was like, are they going to think I'm not professional? Like, does that mean they're not going to
Yeah.
refer to me if I'm wearing jeans into the office? And like, eventually I had to be like, I'm in private practice because I want to show up as me, and like
Yeah.
wearing jeans feels like me, and I'm going to like, and I also want my clients to feel comfortable showing up as them.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big shifts for me was like I had a client come in for an intake, and like it was like an older teenager, and so like their mom came in with them, and mom was like wearing like a suit, and like kiddo was in like like nice clothes too and everything, and then
Yeah.
like she saw me in like jeans and a t-shirt, and then the next time they came in they were like both wearing leggings, and like
Yeah.
they just looked so much more comfortable too. And so I was like, good, that's like what I want them to feel like they can come in wearing what they want to wear.
Totally. And I think it's so like important too, because if you can't even feel comfortable showing up to your office wearing the clothes that feel good to you, like how are you going to say the stuff that feels so, so hard to say out loud? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's just so important for building that relationship to be okay with being like another human on the other side of the screen or the other side of the couch or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. Once that like happened, I like fully embraced it. I was like, you know what? I wear jeans, I wear t-shirts and crop tops, and sometimes I wear other stuff too. Like I just,
Yep.
got a whole bunch of new blazers. So like I'm gonna
Look at
probably wear
that.
those with jeans and crop. I'm gonna probably wear them with jeans and a crop top. But like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, let's talk about niching down and Instagram content. So, talk to me about like kind of the turning point in your Instagram page, the first time that you went viral and kind of got a bunch of followers.
Trying to think back. I think the first time I went viral was an easy one. It was like coming out of the coffee shop and you like ask the barista to remake your drink kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Um, and so that one felt pretty easy. That was like the first time I think I went viral. I think the second time I went viral was the first time it was not easy.
Mhm.
And so I think this was also kind of one of the turning points for me. So it was one like a reel about like being not being nice anymore because being nice is like often not authentic, and like the difference between niceness and kindness.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did not like that. And so it was like the first time that I had to like also deal with like that negativity
Like
in this.
haters, yeah.
Yes, in the Instagram comments, which is really uncomfortable. But it was also like the time when I was like, okay, the things that often resonate though for a lot of people are the things that like I have to call clients out in session for.
Yeah.
Um, and or the things that are super super validating, right? Like those are the two big things that I feel like on my Instagram page, like those are the things that like go viral or get a lot of engagement or those
Yeah.
kinds of things. Um, but there's always going to be people who aren't going to be ready to be called out. And so, like, I don't know, they hate.
I think what is so helpful with like both of those examples that you gave is both the specificity and like your willingness to say something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that first reel so clearly. You're like, have this beautiful coffee shop behind you, and it's like, that amazing feeling when you walk out and you told the barista, like, whatever, I wanted oat milk instead of almond milk or something. And I think that specificity of like, this is what it means to like take charge and to set boundaries and to say what you need is so much more like potent. It's so much more shareable. It's so much more relatable than, when a people pleaser finally asks for something, right? Like we can be so much more concrete than that. And I think that that was so, so helpful with just making people feel like seen and understood.
Yeah. And it's like such a common thing that so many people feel uncomfortable with. Like,
Totally.
like so many people, I have so many clients and they're like, oh, there's no way I'm doing that. And I'll be
Yep.
like, no, you need to do it. Just do it. And so like it's so relatable because I mean I think there's so many people who have walked out of a coffee shop with the wrong drink or they
Yep.
don't like their drink and then they're all like they're disappointed by it. And so yeah, it was like a very specific example but one that's like very relatable for a lot of people.
Yep. So with this reel, the nice one, you are just kind of doing like a silly B-roll type thing. And on screen, you put POV, your therapist just told you that being nice is actually self-centered, details in the caption, right? And so that's spicy, right? Like you are taking a stand there. And I think that that is so huge in actually like making that content a little bit controversial enough that people want to engage in debate in the comments. They are either going to agree with you, they're going to feel called out, they're going to send it to somebody. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened. And and the reality is though I felt really comfortable, not really comfortable, but I felt comfortable posting that because that is kind of like how I show up in therapy,
Yeah,
right? Like, and I tell people like on consultation calls, like I am direct, like I will be honest with you when it's appropriate, and I'm not going to be like, hey, you're being self-centered or anything like that, but like I'm going to
yeah,
be talking about like what are the underlying motives for that and like all of that, and so like I show up that way in therapy, and so like it felt like okay to post it. Also, I mean, obviously, I didn't have any idea that like it was going to go viral and that people weren't going to read the caption, which is a big shock, right? Like,
yeah.
what? People don't read captions before they comment. Um, but yeah, I think it was like that being very like I don't know, it was very spicy and it definitely got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah. Have you seen like kind of correlations between going viral and either getting clients from Instagram or growing your following? Or is it kind of more like slow and steady, doesn't really matter what's taken off?
It's been a mixture. So I've had some stuff go viral that like I didn't like grow a lot on Instagram. Like it just got shared a ton of times and lots of likes and engagement, but like I didn't gain a ton of followers. And then there's been other stuff where like I know I had one reel go viral and I got like 10,000 followers from it. So
Yeah,
um, and then I've had other ones that have gone viral and like I think that one was the most, but like other times I've had like 6,000 followers from a reel going viral or like 2,000 or
yeah,
whatever. Um and then outside of that like it's slow and steady. I think that's like one of the things that I have to remind myself of is that I think a lot of times we're chasing like those viral reels
yeah,
and like once you do go viral, it's hard not to measure like your other content to that
totally.
standard. And I have to remind myself, like, that's not going to be the everyday norm. Like, I'm not going to
Yes,
have like 1.2 million views on all of my content. Like, even like really, really big accounts, even like really, really big accounts, um, like don't have that on everything. And so that was something that I had to remind myself, like there are going to be like those big jumps of like followers or whatever on some of these things, but other outside of that, it's like a slow and steady, like 20 new followers from this one or 30 new followers from this one or whatever kind of thing.
totally. Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, I think that that's so huge. And I've had that same experience myself where I've had some that'll bring in, I think the most I've ever had is like 8,000 from one reel, but some that will bring in like a few thousand followers. And then kind of the rest of the month just coast, right? Like some days followers go up, some days followers go down. And like that's totally normal. But I think it is really important to kind of have both pieces. Like, even when you're not going viral, your content should be bringing in some new followers. So you're not relying on it. But I think most people who have really big audiences like yourself have had at least a few pieces of content that brought in, several thousand people at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, and I probably have like I mean, since like the fall, I feel like I've had like something that goes like even like a little viral like once a month
Yep.
now. Um, so yeah.
Are you kind of like repurposing ideas, or how do you like get that one viral piece of content per month?
Um, it is I do repurpose some ideas, of course, because like there's only so many things and when you post every single day,
Yeah.
you have to repurpose. And different like concepts or different ideas. So like I'm like, oh, that really worked. So like how can I say it differently? Or is there another like aspect to that piece that went viral that like I could like talk on more or
Yeah.
those kinds of things. Um I also use ChatGPT a lot too. So
Yep.
um, I have like the ChatGPT Pro version, and so like you can ask it to like analyze your Instagram for you and tell you like what's working and what's not working.
Yep.
So that's also helpful, like guiding point too. Um, and I think the other thing is like I don't know. You sometimes will like think that like, oh, this one is gonna be it. Like based upon the other things that have gone viral, this is gonna go so viral again.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't. And you're like, okay, well, that's cool. And then you post something and you're like, whatever, it's a random post. I don't know what time of day it is. Like I just am gonna get this on there. Like and then all of a sudden it's like viral and you're like, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I try not to like read into all of the like I try not to like worry myself too much about like all the specifics. Like, am I posting exactly what needs to be said or like what time of day or like all of that kind of stuff? I'm like showing up when I can, which I do show up pretty much every day.
Yep.
But like, if I can't get it done by 9 a.m., it's fine. Like
Totally.
it'll be okay. I can post it at 2 p.m. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. Um, and so I think it's like also just that consistency piece.
Do you think that consistency has been really helpful for you in kind of growing your audience to this point?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think so like this past month I got 4 new clients from Instagram.
Yay.
Um and all of them have been following they were all like I've been following you for really like for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other thing that I encourage like therapists who are just like starting out with Instagram, or when I'm talking to other therapists about Instagram or whatnot, I'm like, it takes time. Like, yes, you can get clients in the beginning, because I did start getting clients like, which we didn't talk about, but I got like a client after doing one of your trainings in the very beginning when I hadn't actually even like done any therapy content really at all. Like it was more like wellness oriented, and like people knew I was a therapist because I talked about being a therapist on my Instagram, but like
Yeah.
I wasn't like trying to market myself as a therapist. And then like I did one of your trainings and I posted it like I'm accepting new clients and a story or something, and then like someone like was like, "Oh, what? You can be my therapist? Great."
Yeah.
Um and so like I did start getting clients early on, but it was definitely like one here, two here, one here, which is great.
Yeah.
But like I said, like last month I got 4 new clients and I'm like full now pretty much. Um, and like all of them were like, yeah, I've been following you for a long time. So it wasn't like
It's like that long-term relationship building with people online, which is so cool because you can do it. I always get those weird thumbs ups, which
oh
is so
yeah,
cool because because you can do it like it's not one-on-one, right? Like you're not reaching out to people, you're not like DMing them or anything like unethical like that as a therapist, but you're able to show up online, you're able to help thousands of people at once and kind of nurture these relationships that way when people are ready, they know who to reach out to for therapy.
yeah. And I think being consistent and like doing that all the time, like they know what to expect too. So like, I mean, that's the other great thing about getting clients from Instagram is like they already know like what it's going to be like to be in the
Yeah.
therapy room with me. And so like the consultations almost seem a little like not even needed.
Yeah.
I think they're great, like obviously to offer that and to just have a check in with people just in case they're like actually not in my state or something like that. But like generally speaking, like most of the time they get on, they're like, yeah, I struggle with people pleasing and I say yes too much and I'm always anxious because of it. And like, I don't know how to tell anyone no. And like, I'm like, perfect. You're exactly who I would want to work with.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's the other great part is like, they're already a good fit.
Yeah. So kind of like by niching down, you're able to call in the right people for your practice that you really love working with.
Yes. So like afterwards, I mean, it's like sometimes I know when I was in agency work, like some days I'd just be like, oh my gosh, that was so hard.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it feels so much better to leave sessions and be like, yes, like I felt like I was connected with everyone. It felt like we were all like, doing some good stuff. And like,
Yeah.
um, I was like, yeah, I feel like I know how to support these people and like, and what their needs are and all of that. And like, it just feels so good to like be able to walk away from sessions feeling like that.
Yeah. You shared another really good piece of advice a few minutes ago about kind of the first time that you got a therapy client after watching my free training, and how for you it was as simple as saying like, I'm going to show up and actually tell people that they can book an intro call with me and they can get started and I can be their therapist. Was that uncomfortable for you to kind of put yourself out there and sort of sell your services in that way, or?
Yeah. Cause I was still like, okay, I've not done this before. Will people think it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
to be like selling therapy, right? Like essentially. Um, but obviously like there's people who are looking for it.
Yeah.
Um, because lots of people are finding their therapists on Instagram now. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I definitely had to get over that like feeling of like, ooh, I don't want to be too salesy. And
Yep.
even I know when I started like doing the mastermind, that was even something that I had to work through a little bit more of like, but can I really post that like multiple times a week in my stories? Like, is that really
Yep.
okay? And then I had to remind myself, like, okay, first of all, not everyone sees your stories every day. Um, so, like, yeah, if you want to try to catch them, you got to post it multiple
Yep.
times. But also, like, nobody cares. Like, if they don't want it, they just tap next. Like,
Yep.
nobody cares
You're
if
not
you're
bothering anybody by doing that.
no. And that's like something I'm like, and I have to think about my own self and like how it was also helpful for me to think about how like I consume like social media and like I'm never like, oh, how dare they tell
Yep.
me that they're, selling art or they're a therapist with openings or like whatever, right? Like a tattoo artist that's got availability next week. Like I'm never like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they told me about their openings. Like
Yep.
I'm just like, oh, I'm not interested, click.
Yep.
And that's
And
it.
I think when it's ourselves, it feels so much more vulnerable, right? Because you're basically telling the world, like, hey, I'm trying here, right? And that can feel really exposing. Whereas when you're not doing that, it can feel a little more giving, right? Like, I'm just helping people, I'm just educating, versus, I'm really putting myself out there and I'm trying to grow my business. And maybe you want to work with me in return.
Yeah, I for sure can remember when I first started in private practice, like wanting to have this facade of like, I have a thriving practice and I'm full and and I'm like, but that was so silly because I didn't and I needed
Yep.
people to refer clients to me. Like I was not full. I had lots of
Yep.
space and but like there was like that mentality of like I don't want it's also like a lot of like I didn't want other therapists to judge me. And I think that was something that I talked about a lot during
Yep.
coaching too. It wasn't like I was worried about other people, like the people I was actually wanting to talk to, judging me. It was always like more so worried that like other therapists were gonna like see something that I posted and be like, that's not right or that's not ethical or like whatever.
Yep.
Um, and that was kind of the same way with like putting myself out there and be like, I have openings and like I would like to, take some more clients and like it was more so worried about like other therapists.
Have you had that experience at all of like other therapists being not so nice about the content you're putting out or?
No, not really. I think the only one I had one go viral, and it was actually from your Reels membership. It was like about like I read a quote in a book once, and then like a quote.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't put the author's name on the actual reel,
Yeah.
and I like got so many people like on that. They just were like so very upset about it. And um, and so many people also didn't understand that you can't edit reels like once they're posted. They're like,
Yeah.
you need to edit this content, and I was like, yeah, but like, did you also see all the comments of people who are like, I needed this today,
Yeah.
like, thanks for sharing. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not editing it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's really been the only time, and there were a lot of therapists in that one
Yeah.
where they were like, you're wrong or you're bad because you didn't put the author's name in the reel. So
It's so black and white for people. I think sometimes when in reality there's so much gray.
yeah, yeah,
I've had that experience too of, the biggest thing that I get hate about online is telling therapists that they can and should make money. Wild concept, but it's always therapists. Like I do get a lot of hate from other therapists about it, but it's always therapists that are not in private practice and they're not marketing themselves on Instagram. They're like commenting from a personal account. And I think it's so interesting because the people who are kind of like going for it, going after their dreams, like showing up on Instagram, doing the same thing that you are, I find are the most supportive group of people. Like they're never going to give you hate because they know how hard it is to put yourself out there and create content. And so it's really, I think the people who are like playing small or, pursuing a different path as a therapist, that it's easier to cast judgment. And so that's always been helpful for me, of like, anybody who is going where I want to go or has been where I want to go is probably not going to hate on this. So I don't need to concern myself too much with what the other people are going to think.
Yeah. Yep. I think, and I really think just as a field, like that is just, I think it's something that a lot of us have to work through, right? We're kind of like, I mean, we're told that we're supposed to like be martyrs essentially,
Yeah.
but I know like while I think I was doing like okay therapy when I was in agency work, like it for sure wasn't my best. Like I like constantly felt like, oh, I really wish I knew what to do here. Like,
Yeah.
but then I also didn't have time to like do a lot of research outside of sessions or like get a lot of consultation or anything like that because like I was booked with a lot of really acute folks
Yeah.
um and so I just didn't even feel like I could really be like it was a place for people to talk and feel safe and talk, but I didn't feel like I could be really effective in like helping people make a lot of changes when I was doing that work.
Yeah.
Um yeah. And so now when I'm like, you know what, I need to charge 150 so that I can see the amount of people a week that I won't feel like that, so that I can like do some research outside of session and I can like get extra consultation if I need to, or
Yeah.
I can follow up with like their psychiatrist about like medication treatment and like all these other things. And like, but I need to charge this rate. Otherwise, I am going to be stressed out about like, my own living expenses.
Yeah. I think it's like twofold, right? Charging a higher rate allows you to see less clients and have more space in your calendar. And also making more money allows you to have much less like stress in your own personal life and have mental space to be able to show up with like your full capacity for other people.
Absolutely. And something that I have fully embraced now is like reminding myself that like wanting to make money doesn't mean I don't care.
Yeah, totally.
Like I am allowed to want to make money. I'm allowed to want to like travel and like buy new shoes and like
Yeah.
do the things. And it doesn't mean I care like any less about my clients or the people I work with or people in general.
Yeah.
So that's like also a big mindset shift that like,
Yeah. I think it
yeah.
just means like you care about yourself too, right? And recognize that this is not like a volunteer project, it's your career. And so, of
Mm-hmm.
course, you're going to need to make like a good living doing it.
Yeah.
How has your income changed since kind of like when you started your Instagram?
Yeah. So back when I first started doing like Instagram, I was around like 2,500 a month. I think that might have been like with consultation work. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'd have to go back and look. But um and like last month I was like 9,500 and I had
Yay.
we also have a therapist now that's also hired under me. And she did like 1,700. So yeah.
Amazing. So we're kind of like right past that 10K a month mark between what you're bringing in for yourself and bringing in for your associate too.
Yep.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's been very good. It's very exciting. Um, and it was something that I also like, I think when I first started coaching, like that 10K mark, I said I wanted to reach that goal, but it also didn't feel like really that realistic, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. Like I was like, that's the goal I'm reaching for, but like, you know what, honestly, I'll be happy with 6K. Like that'd be
Yeah.
great. Let me just double what I'm making, right? Like,
Totally.
and so I don't know, it's really exciting to actually get there and I have more goals in mind and stuff. So like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's wild too. I think of like the internet can kind of make like all these numbers and stuff feel a bit skewed, right? Of like even pulling out the goal of 10K, I feel like is very internet driven, of just like, this is when you're successful, is when you have 10K months, right? But it's wild to think that in less than 2 years, probably less than a year and a half, you basically like quadrupled your income and took your practice to six figures. I think is like so worth celebrating and such a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. It's been very exciting, and like hiring an associate is also like really exciting, and especially because like my hope of hiring her is also like I want her to know that like she's fresh. She's a fresh therapist. Like I want her to know
Yep.
like you can make money and you should make money, and like it's okay to make money, and like yeah, all of that. So
Amazing. What advice would you give to other therapists, maybe particularly people that are not in like the big cities where it's kind of more expected to charge a premium rate, who are wanting to build a private pay caseload?
so the first thing is like um I think there like we tell ourselves there are not a lot of people charging like premium rates. That's actually not true, I don't think. Like
Yeah.
I think once you start doing it and you start surrounding yourself with people who are also willing to say like, "Oh yeah, I charge that much too."
Yeah.
Um cuz I think there's like a little bit of like I'm afraid to tell people that I charge 150 or 175 or even 200, right? Like because we're in the Midwest and like that
Yeah.
number feels high. So I think like a lot of people aren't talking about it, but I do think there are a lot of people who are actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just not like they're broadcasting it. They're also not the people who often are showing up in the Facebook groups. So like,
Yeah.
um, because they have full caseloads, but um, and so I think like part of it is like reminding yourself that like there are other people who do it, and there are people who can afford that
Yeah.
and will be happy to pay you that premium rate, especially if they feel like you can help them, right?
Yeah.
Um, I know like a lot of times people they're like, I don't want to just go to another venting session. Like that's great, but like I want to actually like be able to make changes in my life. Um, and so they're willing to pay the higher rates.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's like the two pieces. Like, A, there are people who are doing it. Like, there actually are people who are charging that. And I think once you start doing it, you start seeing it more.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too. Like, there was like some confirmation bias happening for me. Like, I didn't believe people were charging that. And so, like, I was paying attention to all the people who weren't charging that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did start charging that and start telling myself, like, I can, and I saw that I could, I started seeing that there were lots of other people charging that too.
Yeah.
And so I think there's like also checking in with your own confirmation bias around like those kinds of things is really important.
And like going out and finding that evidence and like building that community of other therapists who are trying to build a similar practice, I think is so huge.
Yeah. Um, and now like I'm in the Facebook groups and people will be like asking like, I'm thinking about raising my rate. And I'm like, yeah, you should do it. I was like, you have 20 years of expertise and you have this, you should be charging way more. You
Yeah.
should go 175. You do it. And they're like, oh,
Oh,
that's
I
really
love that.
uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm like, that sounds so scary. And I was like, yeah, you should do whatever sounds scary. You
Yeah.
got the skills. Like, do it.
I love a voice of reason and a hype woman in the Facebook groups because when I first started, I was really in the Facebook groups too, like scouring for clients, and that was just not the vibe. So I love that you are staying in there and kind of paying it forward for people.
Yes. And I talk about Instagram too. So, like, in the groups, like, because a lot of people will be like, where are people getting clients from? Like, how are you doing this? Like, all of that. And I'm like, you should get on Instagram. Like, do
Yeah,
Instagram. Like, Instagram works. Yeah. So,
love that. And one last time, remind everybody today where they can find you on Instagram if they want to connect and chat about private practice or Instagram growth or just people pleasing in general.
yeah. So I'm at Jen.Nobo. Nob as in boy, O.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and link your Instagram in the show notes, as well as those few viral reels that we talked about if anyone wants to take a look and check them out. And thank you for spending your time with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.